Hello fellow Unreal Engine games developers. Today in our continuing desert driving game series we're going to allow our players to change car colours and car textures. So let's get straight into it. We're going to allow our players to change the colour and textures on their vehicle. So the first thing we need to do is open up the blueprint for the pickup truck. If you go into your vehicle variety pack blueprints, pickup, and open the BP pickup. If you go to the viewport, so here's our vehicle, click on mesh, and you can see at the moment that it consists of 4 materials. So the main one is for the body of the vehicle. There's another material for the interior, the glass windows and the undercarriage. I'm only really interested in the body. Everything else is going to stay the same. So what we want to do first of all is we want to parameterize this material so that we can change the color and texture. So if you go into use the browse to find that, and pick up body and double click to open it up. And it's quite a simple material. It has a texture driving the base color, texture driving the normal, and another one driving the ambient occlusion, metallic and roughness. So we're not going to change these normal and roughness textures. We're just going to change this main base color texture. So if you click on it, what we'll do is we'll parameterize this. So right click on it and choose convert to parameter, and let's call this body texture. So that means we'll be able to change it in the blueprint from one texture to another. And I also want a way of changing color as well. At the moment you can see here that this is a sort of orangey yellow color. So I want to apply a color to this. First thing I need to do is get rid of the color that's already in the texture before I apply a new color. And the way you do that is use a desaturate node. If I drag off the RGB, do desaturation, you can see that it's the same pattern, but it's now in grayscale. So black and white. And now what we can do is we can apply a color to this. So let's do another new parameter. If you use the number 4 on your keyboard and click on some space, you'll create a vector, for a 4-dimensional vector, which can also be used for color, RGB and alpha. And what we'll do is we'll set a color here. We'll try and set it as close to the original as possible, which was a sort of orangey color. So if you do 1 in red, 0.5 in the green, and 1 in the alpha, that gives you this orange hue. And now what we'll do is we'll move this along a bit and we'll do a multiply. So we'll multiply the desaturated body texture with the new color and then plug that back into the base color. And you'll see that that returns it to a similar color to how it was originally. Not exactly the same, but pretty close. And now what we want to do is we want to make this a parameter as well, the color. So if you right click here, convert to parameter, and we'll call this body color. So we now have 2 parameters we can change. We can change the color of the vehicle by changing the body color parameter, or we can change the texture by changing the body texture parameter. So apply and save this and leave it open because we might need to refer to it. Go back to your BP pickup and let's start putting in the code for changing the allowing the players to change the color and texture. So go to your event graph, find a little blank area here, and what we want to do is we want to have 2 input actions, one for change color and one for change texture. So let's set up the inputs first. Go to your main map, project settings, and input, and we'll create a couple of new inputs, a couple of new action mappings. So first one, I'm going to say change livery color, and I'll make that, you can make it anything you like, but I'm going to make it the right arrow. And then I'll do another one. Let's do that open so you can see it. Do another one, change livery texture, and I'm going to make that the left arrow. And obviously you can bind these to gamepad controls as well, but I'll leave you to do that in your own time. So now we have our inputs. Go back to the pickup and let's start doing the code. So first thing I want to do is see if somebody has requested a change. So let's do input action, change livery color. And if somebody presses it, what we want to do is we want to request the color to be changed on the server. Remember, everything wants to be done on the server first, and then we replicate it out to all of the copies. So we need to create another event, so custom event, which we'll call server change livery color. And we need to make sure that runs on the server, and then call that from the pressed event. Okay, and now how are we going to change the color? So what we want to do is we want to retain a sort of an array or an index of what the current color is, and then we'll have an array of colors and an array of textures. So we need to set up some variables for that. So go to your variables section here, and we'll add the first new variable, which we'll call current livery color, and that is an integer. And we'll create another variable which we will call livery colors, and this is going to be a linear color, and we want this to be an array. So we're going to use this to store all the possible colors we can cycle through. So if you compile that, you'll be able to then add these colors in. So let's add 4 colors for now. We'll make the first one the same as the default color, now orange, and then we'll just do red, green and blue for now. Red, alpha red, green, alpha 1, and last one, blue and alpha 1. Okay, so we now have an array of 4 colors we can cycle through. So if we go back to our current livery color, this defaults to 0. So we're going to start off with our orange color at 0, and our server change livery, we now want it to cycle through the different color options. So the way we do that is we take our current livery color and do an plus to add, not times, plus, so int plus int, so we're going to add 1 to the current color, and then we're going to compare it to the length of the array. So take the livery colors array in and do length. So that will tell us how long that array is, because if we add more colors to it, we'll be able to go further through the indexes. And then we want to compare these. So the color we've just added 1 to, we want to see, is it equal to the length of the array? And if it is equal to the length of the array, then we've got to the end of the array. We want to start from 0 again. And a nice quick way of doing that is if you use a select node, so select int. We've not used these before, but it's a form of if, then if or else statement or case statement. So it takes our boolean here, true or false, and if it's true, it returns the top value. So if we have reached the end of the array, which is true, we want to set the current color to 0. But if we haven't, then we want to take the current color we added 1 to. And that will give us a value going 0, 1, 2, 3 until it reaches a length and then back to 0. Okay, so we've done that. Now we want to set the new current livery color. So use Alt. This is our first real executable step, and plug that in. So all this server change livery color has done is really just set the current color index that we want to use. It hasn't actually set the color yet. So the next thing we want to do is actually apply the color associated with this index. So let's create another event, and we'll call this change livery. We can call this now, the end of here. And this, we want to apply the color at this index. So let's take our array of colors, and we want to get an item, and the index that we want to get is based on the current livery color that we've set. And now we know what color we want to set. We need to apply it. Now, the way you apply colors to materials, we've got to first of all have a dynamic material instance for this pickup truck. So let's just go back to the viewport. Actually, let's go to the mesh just to show you. So the mesh has 4 materials on it, and the one we want to change is element 0, the pickup body. We're not interested in elements 1, 2 and 3. So just leave this section for a second, and go to the event begin play. So when this pickup truck comes into existence, we need to create a dynamic material instance that we can reference. So what you need to do is drag this out a little bit more. Drag out the mesh with Control. Drag off this, and if you start typing dynamic material, you've got this create dynamic material instance. And let's make sure that's executed as well. And it asks what element you want to create, what material element you want to create the dynamic material instance for. We want to create it for element 0, the body. And that is really all we need to do. We just need to now store that so that we can reference it later. So right click here, promote to variable, and we'll call this variable mi car body. Okay, so we now have that as a reference that we can use in our code for setting the color or the texture. So let's go back to where we were. So we've got the color associated with the current color that we've set. And now we can take in this material instance with Control. And if you start typing parameter, actually do set parameter, you can set different types of parameters within that material. So the color is actually a vector parameter value. So select set vector parameter value. So we can set that. We can put in our color from our array of colors. And now we need to put in the parameter name. So double check the parameter name you gave for color. Go back to your material, and we called it body color. So we will give parameter name here body color. Okay, and that should be sufficient. So let's see what we've done here. We press a key for changing the color. We go to the server and we select the next color in the range of colors, or the next index. Then we change the livery, and which gets the current color and applies it. However, we're only doing it on the server at the moment, so let's test it out anyway, and then we'll come back and see if we can get it to run, to propagate to all of the clients as well. So let's do it as single player. Let's play. Okay, and we currently have a orange car there. If I press the right arrow key, it changes to red, then to green, then to blue, and if I press it again, it should have reached the end of the array length and go back to the start. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. So it's working on the server. But if I tried it with 2 players, press play. If I change it on the server, it changes, but if I then drive up to the other car, a little bit further away, okay, and as I approach it, that from the client's perspective, I'm still an orange car because I haven't yet told the copies to change colour. And also if I go to the client and try and change colour, you can see that it changes on the server at the top, but it doesn't change on the client version. So we need to replicate it to the client copies as well. And by now you should be kind of familiar with how we do this. We use our good old friend rep notify. So the current livery colour that we've just set on the server, if we change it from replication none to replication rep notify, we'll now get this on rep current livery colour function, and that will fire when the current livery colour arrives at the client copy, and we can then call the change livery function. Compile and save. So as each current color is replicated to the clients, it calls the change livery function, and this change livery function will now have the current livery color here that it can apply to the local copy. So that should all work perfectly. So let's go and test this out with our 2-player version. So go to the server first, change the color to red, find the other vehicle, drive over to it, and you can see as I approach that it's red on the client as well, so that's a good first test. Now go to the client, if I try and change the color here, it changes on both copies. So I ought to test this out with 3 and 4 players first, but it's a good first test, and it seems to work across server and client. So that's the color changes done. How do we change texture? Well, it's pretty much the same, but the parameter we're changing is texture rather than color this time. So if you come out of here, we'll put in the code that we need to. So it's very, very similar code. So if we take our input action change livery color, well, actually what we'll do first of all is we will move this down a bit, change livery, and let's copy this change livery color. So select everything here, Control W. Okay, and now this event here is going to be server change livery texture. So what we need now is we need an array. We need a current livery texture index and an array of livery textures. So let's set those up. So in variables, let's first of all set up our current livery texture, and that will be an integer, and make sure it's not an array, it's a single variable. Okay, compile and save, and then we'll set up a new array for textures, and we'll call this livery textures, and this will be of type texture 2D object reference, and make sure it's an array, and compile and save. And now we'll be able to set up textures as well. So if I click on, let's say 3 elements here. So the first one we'll set up, if you do TX pickup, that's the current texture that's set up for the car body. And then other textures you can use whatever you want. Now you could export this. In fact, in real life you'd probably export this to an app where you can paint textures such as Blender or Substance Painter or even Procreate on the iPad, but that goes beyond the scope of today's tutorial. But you could do that, and then you could set up the texture you wanted and then re-import it back in. For now, just to test it out, if you do TX pickup again, there's a couple of other textures here that I can just use just to make sure it works. So pick up diffuse, diffuse 1 and diffuse 2. So we've got 3 elements in our array. Compile and save that. And now we just need to change the variables in change livery texture. So let's delete current livery color and livery colors and the set with notify. And now what we'll do is we'll pull in current livery texture. So this is the variable we're going to be incrementing. Current livery texture or livery textures array is what we're going to be checking the length of. And then the new value of the current livery texture, Alt, pull that out, and we'll set that here. And then we'll call our change livery function. So our change livery function changes the color at the moment. What we want to do is now change the texture as well. So similar sort of idea. Take the current livery texture index, take our livery textures array and do a get. We're going to get the livery texture at our current livery texture position, and now we need to apply it to the car body. So take our material instance that we created and again set the parameter value, but this time you want to set texture parameter value because it's a texture type that we're setting. And so we're now going to take our texture and plug that in. And the parameter name, let's just double check. Body texture is what we call the parameter. So in the parameter name here, body texture. Okay, so we've now set up most of this. One thing we haven't set up is the current livery texture. We need to make this a rep notify as well. So if somebody changes the texture, yes, at the moment it'll change the server livery, but we need to be notified when that's been replicated to the clients so that this event can fire. So very simple, take current livery texture, make it rep notify, go to our onRep current livery texture and call the change livery function so that it changes it on the client as well. Okay, and the last thing we need to do is we need to have an input action to change the texture. So we've got an input to change the livery color. Let's do input action change livery texture. Then when we set up the left arrow, and if it's pressed, we'll call server change livery texture. And I think that is everything. So let's do another test to see if textures and colors both change. Going to play, go up to the server, and if I change the texture, you can see that the textures cycle between a plain texture with an owl and a grimy texture here. And I can also change color as well as texture. Let's drive up to the other player and make sure that they see my new texture and color, and I can change it on the client as well. Okay, so I can see the color there. Go to the client, change color, go back a bit with the server so that I can see both cars. So on the client, if I change the texture, now that's interesting. It's changing on the client, but not on the server. Okay, so I've missed something out. So let's go and have a quick look in the code and see what I've missed out. So if I change the livery texture, I get the current texture value and increment it. If it equals the length, I reset it to 0. I set the notify. Oh, I see what I've done. So see, again, this is such a simple mistake to make. The server event here, I didn't set it to run on server. So I need to make it run on server. So the server event, the server part of this didn't run. That's why it changed on the client, but not on the server. So this is why you need to test all the way through your development process. And now if I play and if I drive to the other car, just park where I can see it in both viewports. Okay, if I change the color here, it changes on both. If I change the design, it changes on both. If I go to the client, if I change the color, it changes on both. And if I change design, it changes on both. So that's all working now. So I hope you found today's tutorial useful. In the next tutorial, we'll be looking at nighttime driving. So stay tuned and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.